My name is James, and this is the story of how 15 years of marriage collapsed in the most unexpected way possible. Melissa and I had built what I thought was the American dream. A 2-story colonial house in suburban Connecticut, 2 kids, Tyler, 13, and Sophie, 11, and a routine that felt as solid as the foundation beneath our feet. I worked as a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing plant, steady hours, decent pay. She managed a local boutique clothing store. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, stable. That Tuesday evening in March changed everything. The kids were upstairs doing homework when Melissa sat across from me at our kitchen table, her fingers nervously tracing the wood grain. "James, I've been thinking about us lately," she began, her voice carrying an unfamiliar weight. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing production schedules. "What about us? Maybe we should consider opening up our marriage." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "Open marriage?" I repeated slowly. "Like, what exactly are you suggesting?" She leaned forward, her brown eyes earnest. "It's becoming more common, James. People are realizing that monogamy might not be realistic for everyone. We could explore connections with other people while maintaining our commitment to each other and the family." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Melissa, we've been married for 15 years. We have children. This isn't some college experiment." "I'm not talking about anything crazy," she said quickly. "Just freedom to connect with others. Emotional, physical, whatever feels right. But we'd still be the primary relationship. Still be family." I set down my mug harder than intended. "No. Just think about it." "No, Melissa. I don't need to think about it. Marriage means something to me. Commitment means something." She sighed, a sound that seemed to carry disappointment I didn't understand. "I figured you'd react this way." "React what way? Like someone who takes his wedding vows seriously? Like someone who's afraid of growth?" That stung. But I held my ground. If wanting to keep our marriage between the 2 people who made the commitment makes me afraid of growth, then I guess I'm afraid. The conversation ended there, but something had shifted. A crack had appeared in what I'd thought was solid ground. Over the next few weeks, life returned to what seemed like normal. Melissa didn't bring up the open marriage again, and I convinced myself it had been a momentary lapse in judgment. Maybe she'd been reading too many articles online, or listening to the wrong friends. But subtle changes began creeping in. Melissa started working longer hours at the boutique. "Inventory season," she explained when I asked why she was coming home after 9 p.m. 3 nights a week. "Sandra's been swamped with the new spring collections." She'd always been social, but now there were new names in her conversations. Ashley invited me to that new yoga studio downtown. "Christina thinks I should try that Mediterranean restaurant on 5th Street. Some of us girls are planning a weekend in Boston." The weekend in Boston happened in early May. She left Friday after work and came back Sunday evening, glowing with what she called much-needed girl time. "How was it?" I asked, helping her carry her overnight bag upstairs. "Amazing. We hit all the historical sites, did some shopping on Newbury Street. Christina knows the best little places." I'd never heard her mention Christina before the past month, but I didn't press. Everyone deserves friends. Then there were the phone habits. Melissa had never been secretive with her phone before. It usually sat on the kitchen counter, buzzing with calls from her sister or notifications from the store. But now she kept it close, taking it to the bathroom, charging it on her side of the bed instead of the kitchen counter. When it rang during dinner one evening, she glanced at it and declined the call. "Who was it?" Tyler asked, ever the curious teenager. "Just work stuff," she said, but her cheeks had flushed slightly. The pieces weren't adding up to anything concrete, but they were adding up to something. I just couldn't figure out what. My suspicions might have remained just that, vague unease without form, if not for Melissa's mother's birthday party in June. Dorothy was turning 65, and the whole family was gathering at her house for a barbecue celebration. I'd planned to arrive with Melissa and the kids, but a last-minute issue at the plant meant I had to work Saturday morning. "I'll meet you there around 2, I told her as she loaded potato salad into the car. "Don't be too late," she said, kissing my cheek. "You know how Mom gets when people miss her speeches." The plant issue resolved faster than expected, and I found myself pulling into Dorothy's driveway at 1:30, half an hour earlier than planned. The party was clearly in full swing. Cars lined both sides of the street, and I could hear laughter and music drifting from the backyard. I decided to enter through the kitchen to drop off the wine I'd brought and see if Dorothy needed any help with food prep. The sliding door from the deck was open, warm June air flowing through the house. That's when I saw them. Melissa stood by the kitchen island, her back to me, but I could see her reflection in the window above the sink. She was laughing at something someone was saying, and then I saw the man's hand settle on her lower back. Not a friendly pat, a familiar touch. Possessive. I took a step back, my heart hammering, and peered around the doorframe. The man was Ryan Castellano, Dorothy's neighbor for the past 3 years. He'd helped Dorothy with her yard work after her hip surgery, and we'd exchanged pleasantries at previous family gatherings. Nice enough guy. Divorced, worked in sales for some tech company. But the way he was looking at Melissa, the way she was looking back. Ryan leaned closer to whisper something in her ear, and she laughed, tilting her head so it almost rested against his shoulder. His hand moved from her back to her hip, and she didn't move away. My mouth went dry. I backed out of the kitchen quietly and walked around to the front of the house, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. I called Melissa. "Hey honey," she answered, her voice slightly breathless. "Are you here?" "Just pulling up," I lied. "Where are you?" "In the kitchen helping Mom with drinks." "Come around back." I waited 3 minutes, then walked through the house to the kitchen. When I entered, Melissa was alone, arranging beer bottles in a bucket of ice. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. "There you are," she said brightly, coming over to hug me. "Perfect timing. Mom's about to cut the cake." I hugged her back, but all I could think about was how her hair smelled different. Not her usual vanilla shampoo. Something floral and unfamiliar. The image of Melissa and Ryan haunted me for days. I replayed the scene over and over, analyzing every detail. Had I misread the situation? Was I letting paranoia twist innocent interaction into something sinister? But the more I thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. Christina. The mysterious new friend who knew all the best places in Boston. I'd asked Melissa for her last name once, planning to suggest we have her and her husband over for dinner, but Melissa had been vague. "Oh, I'm not sure she's seeing anyone seriously right now." The yoga studio downtown. Melissa had never shown interest in yoga before, but suddenly she was going twice a week. "It's really helping with my flexibility," she'd said, which had struck me as an odd way to phrase it. The weekend in Boston. Had she even gone to Boston? I started paying closer attention to her patterns. The late nights at the boutique coincided with evenings when I knew Sandra closed early for family obligations. The weekend plans with the girls seemed to happen when I was tied up with work or kids' activities, making it impossible for me to suggest joining or even meeting her friends. And Ryan. Now that I was looking, I saw him everywhere. At the grocery store where Melissa shopped. At the gas station she frequented. At the coffee shop where she'd started stopping on Saturday mornings. Small town, I told myself. But our town had 12,000 people. It wasn't that small. I needed proof. Not for a divorce court. I wasn't there yet, but for my own sanity. I needed to know if I was losing my mind or if my marriage was falling apart. In July, Melissa announced another weekend trip. "The girls want to do a spa weekend in the Berkshires," she said, already packing her bag. "Christina found this amazing place with mineral springs." "Sounds expensive," I said carefully. "It's a group rate. Really reasonable when you split it 4 ways. 4 ways? She paused, enfolding a sundress I'd never seen before. "Me, Christina, Ashley, and I think Sarah from my old job might join us." I nodded and helped her pack, even kissing her goodbye Friday evening as she loaded her car. But 30 minutes after she left, I got in my own car and drove to Ryan's house. His driveway was empty. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:15 p.m., a car pulled in. Not Ryan's usual sedan, but a red compact I didn't recognize. A few minutes later, lights came on in the house. I waited until 11, then drove home. Saturday morning, I called the spa Melissa had supposedly gone to. "I'm trying to reach my wife," I told the receptionist. "She's there for a weekend package with some friends, but I can't reach her cell. Could you page Melissa Henderson for me?" "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone by that name registered this weekend." My hands were shaking when I hung up. I drove back to Ryan's house. The red compact was still there, parked next to his sedan now. Melissa came home Sunday evening full of stories about cucumber face masks and Swedish massages. She showed me a small bottle of lavender oil she'd bought in the spa gift shop. "How was Christina's first spa experience?" I asked. "Oh, she loved it, though she's not used to being disconnected from technology for so long. You know how some people are with their phones." I nodded, watching her unpack. "Did you take any pictures?" "A few." She showed me her phone briefly. images of rolling hills and a rustic building that could have been anywhere. No people in any of the shots. No group photos? You know how self-conscious Ashley gets about pictures. Every answer was plausible. Every answer was a lie. I waited until the kids were asleep, then sat on the edge of our bed where Melissa was reading a novel. I called the spa, I said quietly. She looked up, eyebrows raised. What? Why? You weren't there. The book slipped from her hands. For just a moment, her face went completely blank. Then she laughed. Of course I was there. What are you talking about? I called Saturday morning. They had no record of you. She sat up straighter. James, that's ridiculous. Maybe you called the wrong place, or they couldn't find the reservation. You know how these small places are with their systems. Where were you, Melissa? At the spa. With my friends. James, you're starting to scare me. This paranoid behavior isn't like you. But I could see it now, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. She was good, but she wasn't perfect. I saw you with Ryan, I said. The color drained from her face. At your mother's party. In the kitchen. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different. Harder. James, you're my husband. But that doesn't mean you own me. So you admit it, I said. Melissa stood up from the bed, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. I admit that I formed a connection with someone. Yes. A connection. James, remember our conversation in March? About opening our marriage? You shut it down immediately. You didn't even want to discuss it. I stared at her. So you just went ahead without me? I told you what I needed. You said no. But my needs didn't just disappear because you were uncomfortable. The audacity of it took my breath away. Melissa, that's not how marriage works. According to who? According to some book written by people who lived in a completely different world than we do. She moved to our dresser, leaning against it with her arms crossed. In the lamplight, she looked like a stranger. You had an affair, I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. I explored a connection with someone who understands me in ways you've never tried to. This is unbelievable. What's unbelievable is that you thought you could just say no, and that would be the end of it. Like I'm some child asking permission. I felt like I was drowning. So how long has this been going on? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. She sighed. Since April. 3 months. 3 months of lies, of looking me in the eye every morning and every evening, and pretending our marriage was intact. The weekend trips? The late nights? Some of them. The spa weekend? We went to his cabin in New Hampshire. Each admission was like a physical blow. I found myself gripping the bedpost to stay steady. Do you love him? I asked. For the first time since this conversation began, Melissa hesitated. I love aspects of what we have together. That's not an answer. It's the answer you get. The next few weeks passed in a surreal haze. Melissa and I maintained a facade of normalcy for the kids, but our private conversations were stilted, careful affairs. She seemed to expect that I would simply adjust to this new reality, that she was conducting a relationship with Ryan while maintaining our marriage. Other couples make this work, she said during one of our late-night talks. It doesn't have to be threatening to what we have. But it is threatening to what we have, I replied. It's already destroyed what we had. She seemed genuinely puzzled by this. Nothing has to change between us, James. I'm still here. I'm still committed to our family. You're sleeping with another man. That's just physical. What we have is deeper than that. I couldn't make her understand that for me, the physical and emotional weren't separate compartments. Her intimacy with Ryan felt like theft, not just of her body, but of something that had belonged to us together. The practical arrangements were becoming increasingly complex. She would disappear for hours at a time, claiming errands or social commitments. I found myself handling more of the kids' schedules, more of the household responsibilities. When I pointed this out, she accused me of being controlling. You want me to ask permission for every minute of my day, she said. I want you to prioritize your family over your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. This isn't high school, James. But whatever he was taking up more and more space in our lives. Melissa had new clothes, dresses, and tops I'd never seen. She'd changed her hairstyle. She spent longer getting ready in the mornings, even for work. The kids began asking questions. Why is Mom always busy lately? Sophie asked one evening, while I helped her with homework. She's just got a lot going on at work, I said, hating myself for the lie. Tyler, more perceptive at 13, was less easily deflected. Are you and Mom fighting? Why do you ask? You don't talk to each other anymore. Not real talking. He was right. Melissa and I had become polite strangers sharing a house and a last name. In August, Dorothy called me at work. "James, honey, we need to talk." I'd been dreading this conversation. Dorothy was sharp, observant, and protective of her family. If anyone was going to notice the changes in Melissa's behavior, it would be her. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the house and potential eavesdroppers. "I know about Melissa and Ryan," she said without preamble. I nearly choked on my coffee. "You know, I'm not blind, sweetheart. And I'm not stupid." She stirred sugar into her tea with sharp, agitated movements. "I've been watching this develop for months. Months. It started at Easter. The way they looked at each other during dinner. Then at my birthday party." She shook her head. "I should have said something then. What exactly have you seen?" Dorothy's face was tight with disapproval. "His car in our neighborhood at odd hours. Melissa stopping by my house looking for excuses to run into him. Last week I saw them at that new restaurant on Maple Street, holding hands across the table like teenagers." The betrayal felt fresh all over again. Not just from Melissa, but from the whole situation. How many people in our small community knew about this before I did? "What do you think I should do?" I asked. Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I think you should protect yourself and those kids. This isn't some phase she's going through. She's made her choice. She keeps saying she wants both. That this doesn't have to end our marriage. Honey, you can't build a marriage on someone's leftovers." The bluntness of it stung, but she was right. Whatever Melissa was offering me now, divided attention, conditional loyalty, part-time commitment, it wasn't marriage as I understood it. "The kids don't know," I said. "They know something's wrong. Kids always do." We talked for another hour, Dorothy sharing her observations and her frustrations with her daughter's choices. By the time I left, I knew what I had to do. The breaking point came in early September, just as the kids were starting back to school. Melissa had been out late again, a work event that supposedly ran until nearly midnight. I'd stopped asking for details, stopped trying to verify her stories. I was exhausted by the constant vigilance, the mental energy required to track all the inconsistencies. When she came home, I was sitting in the living room, still dressed, clearly waiting for her. "You didn't have to wait up," she said, kicking off her heels. "Where were you?" "I told you, the regional managers had dinner at—" "Melissa, stop." She froze halfway through removing her earrings. "I can't do this anymore," I said. "Can't do what?" "Pretend that this is a marriage. Pretend that we're a couple. Pretend that what you're doing is anything other than having an affair." She sat down across from me, her face guarded. "James, we've talked about this." "No, you've talked. You've explained and rationalized and justified. But we haven't talked about what I need." "What do you need?" "A wife who chooses me. A partner who prioritizes our family. Someone who doesn't lie to me every single day." "I haven't lied. Everything you say is a lie." The words came out louder than I'd intended. "Every work event and girls' night and weekend trip. Every time you walk in here and pretend you haven't been with him." Melissa's composure finally cracked. "Fine. Yes, I've been with Ryan tonight. We had dinner and then went back to his place. Is that what you wanted to hear?" What I wanted was a wife who wouldn't need to tell me that. We stared at each other across the space that used to feel like home. "I never meant for this to hurt you," she said quietly. "But you knew it would." She didn't deny it. I called a lawyer the next morning. Patricia Chun had handled my brother's divorce 3 years earlier, and she'd been both competent and compassionate. I made an appointment for Friday afternoon, taking a half-day off work. Her office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, warm and professional without feeling sterile. Patricia was in her 40s, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Tell me about your situation," she said after offering me coffee and settling behind her desk. I laid out the whole story, the open marriage proposal, the affair, the lies, the current state of things. Patricia listened without judgment, taking notes occasionally. "How long has the infidelity been going on?" she asked. "About 5 months that I can prove. Maybe longer." "Do you have documentation? Photos, messages, anything concrete?" "I haven't been collecting evidence." I kept hoping we could work it out." She nodded. "That's understandable. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, so proof of adultery isn't necessary for the divorce itself. But it could be relevant for custody and asset division." We talked through the practicalities, the house, the kids' schedules, spousal support, division of assets. It was surreal, reducing 15 years of marriage to a series of legal calculations. What's your wife's position on the marriage? Patricia asked. Does she want to work things out, or is she also considering divorce? She thinks what she's doing is fine. She wants to stay married while continuing her relationship with this other man. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. Has she expressed any willingness to end the extramarital relationship? No. The opposite. She thinks I should accept it as our new normal. And you're not willing to do that? No. I'm not. She made another note. Then we're looking at an irreconcilable differences situation. The question becomes how amicable we can keep this process. I walked out of her office with a retainer agreement and a timeline. 30 days to think it over, then we'd file papers. I decided to give Melissa one final chance to choose our marriage. That weekend, I arranged for the kids to spend Saturday night at my brother's house. When Melissa asked why, I told her we needed to have a serious conversation without interruptions. She agreed, though I could see the wariness in her eyes. Saturday evening, after the kids left, I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, but I set the table with our good dishes and lit candles. I wanted to recreate some semblance of the intimacy we used to share. This is nice, Melissa said as we sat down to eat. What's the occasion? Us, I said. I wanted to talk about us without distractions. We ate mostly in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavy between us. Finally, I pushed my plate aside and looked directly at her. Melissa, I love you. I've loved you for 17 years, and I don't want our marriage to end. She reached across the table and took my hand. I love you too, James. But I can't share you. I can't be married to someone who's building a life with someone else. Her hand tightened on mine. It's not a life, James. It's just a connection. It doesn't change what we have. It changes everything we have. Only if you let it. I pulled my hand back. Melissa, I need you to choose. Me or Ryan. Our marriage or whatever this is you're doing. She was quiet for a long time, staring down at her wine glass. When she looked up, her eyes were sad but determined. I won't be given ultimatums, James. Not even by you. It's not an ultimatum. It's a boundary. It's the same thing. No, it's not. An ultimatum is do this or else. A boundary is I can't accept this situation. And what's the difference in the outcome? I realized then that she'd already made her choice. Maybe she'd made it months ago, or maybe she was making it right now, but it wasn't me. I filed for divorce, I said quietly. The words hung between us like a bridge burning. Melissa's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, hurt, anger, and finally resignation. When? Yesterday. You have 30 days to respond to the papers. She stood up from the table, began clearing dishes with sharp, agitated movements. So this whole dinner was just, what? A performance? It was a goodbye. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. Telling the kids was brutal. Tyler took it with the stoic resignation of someone who'd seen it coming. Sophie cried and asked if it was her fault. Both questions broke my heart in different ways. Sometimes adults change and grow in different directions, I told them, using the language Patricia had suggested. It doesn't mean we love you any less, and it doesn't mean we're not still a family. We're just going to be a different kind of family. Melissa moved out in October, taking an apartment across town. We agreed on joint custody with the kids spending weekdays with me and weekends with her, at least initially. The practical dissolution of our life together was exhausting. Every shared possession became a negotiation. Every routine had to be rebuilt. The kids struggled with the new schedules, the constant transitions between houses. But slowly, gradually, a new normal began to emerge. I found myself sleeping better without the constant tension of waiting for Melissa to come home, wondering where she'd been. I stopped checking her stories for inconsistencies, stopped analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. The house felt different, emptier in some ways, but also more peaceful. By November, the divorce was finalized. Melissa got to keep her new life with Ryan, though from what I heard through Dorothy, it wasn't quite the romantic fantasy she'd imagined. Living with the reality of their relationship, rather than the excitement of secret meetings, proved more challenging than either of them had anticipated. I focused on rebuilding my relationship with the kids and figuring out who I was as a single father. It was harder than I'd expected, but also more rewarding. Without the distraction of marital problems, I could be fully present with Tyler and Sophie in ways I hadn't been in months. I started therapy, not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs for so long, how I could avoid making the same mistakes in future relationships. You're not responsible for your wife's choices, Dr. Martinez told me during one session. You can only control your own responses to those choices. It was a simple concept, but it took me months to really internalize it. In December, Dorothy called with news that surprised even me. Ryan's wife wants to meet with you, she said. His ex-wife? I asked, confused. Ryan had been divorced for several years. No, honey. His current wife. Turns out he never actually filed those divorce papers. He's still married to Jennifer. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. What? Jennifer found out about the affair last week. Apparently she hired someone to follow him, and your wife's name came up in the report. I sat down hard on my couch, trying to process this information. So Melissa was having an affair with a married man? A married man who lied to her about being divorced. I almost felt sorry for Melissa. Almost. Jennifer and I met the following week at the same coffee shop where Dorothy and I had talked months earlier. She was a small, intense woman with tired eyes and a wedding ring she kept twisting around her finger. I wanted to apologize, she said. I had no idea Ryan was involved with your wife. If I'd known, I would have said something. How long were you separated? I asked. Jennifer looked puzzled. We weren't separated. We've been having some problems, sure, but we never separated. Ryan told me he was working late, taking business trips. I never suspected he was. She trailed off. Having an affair, I finished. Having affairs, she corrected. Apparently your wife wasn't the first. This revelation recontextualized everything. Melissa hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd been manipulated by someone who made deception a lifestyle. I could have felt vindicated by Ryan's deception. I could have reached out to Melissa, tried to use this information to win her back or make her see reason. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief. Because it confirmed what I'd already learned through therapy and the long process of rebuilding my life. Other people's choices weren't my responsibility. Melissa had chosen to trust Ryan over me, to prioritize her relationship with him over our marriage, to lie to me for months rather than have honest conversations about what she needed. Those choices said nothing about my worth as a husband or a person, and Ryan's deception didn't make them any less her choices. I focused on the life I was building with my kids, the relationships I was nurturing with friends and family, the work that gave me purpose and satisfaction. 6 months after the divorce was final, I heard from a mutual friend that Melissa and Ryan had ended things. She'd moved to Boston, a real move this time, not a fictional weekend getaway. The kids visited her there once a month, and slowly we developed the kind of cordial co-parenting relationship that prioritized their well-being over our past hurt. I never remarried, though I dated occasionally. I learned to value my independence, to build a life that was fulfilling without needing to be completed by someone else. The kids thrived in their new reality. Tyler graduated high school with honors and got into a good engineering program. Sophie developed into a confident, thoughtful teenager who spoke her mind and stood up for what she believed in. Sometimes, late at night in my quiet house, I thought about the conversation that started it all, Melissa's suggestion of an open marriage. I wondered what would have happened if I'd said yes, if I'd tried to adapt to her vision of commitment. But I knew deep down that it wouldn't have worked. Not because open marriages are inherently wrong or impossible, but because they require honest communication, mutual respect, and shared values. Our marriage had lacked all three long before Melissa suggested opening it up. The betrayal hadn't destroyed me. In many ways, it had freed me, from the exhausting work of trying to hold together something that had already broken, from the constant anxiety of sensing problems I couldn't name or fix, from the smaller betrayals that had been accumulating for years. I learned that sometimes the end of something isn't a failure, it's just an end. And sometimes an end is exactly what you need to begin. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel. So subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video, there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.